Good evening. Patrick here, 8 questions with, have Cheetah will view. Welcome to Wednesday. Um, yeah, well, the good news is that it's not nearly as cold as it was last night. It was 18 degrees yesterday, and today we're cranking it at 43. So not too bad, not too bad. Glad you guys are here tonight. We will be talking with film director Brandon Slagle will be here with us. Brandon is a very, very talented young man. Um, his star is definitely on the rise. He has directed a lot of good films, some trailblazing films. His newest one, The Battle for Saipan, is dropping this week off of Saving Films. Um, so it is out. Um, no, I did not get it today. I looked to the mailbox, Katie, and no package. Uh, I have a feeling things are probably gonna be running just a day late or so. But as soon as I get it, you will. I promise you, I will let you know. I did look after I got home from the library, and there was nothing there. Uh, it says it was delivered. Okay, okay. Well, I went to the mailbox. There was nothing there. So I can double check, but when I got my mail, I had a ton of mail too. Let me tell you that. That's one thing that they're raising the postage, but they're still delivering all the junk mail. So Brandon has did a movie called The Battle of Saipan. Is based on a true story. World War II, during the Pacific War, the United States Fifth Amphibious Corps invaded Saipan. They were trying to take the island because by taking the island, it would bring the Allies that much closer to. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me hold on. Let me go run down there and see. Oh, it's always entertainment here on 8 Questions with, right? Always entertaining. Oh gosh, the closet. Okay, so the good news is that we get the package. We got it. Thank you, Katie. I will do opening on Christmas. Uh, now that's a first for me, that's for sure. So I had to dash down there and get my package. Thank you again, Katie. Hi, Cassie. Hi, Jim. Hi, Wes. So I'll explain the Battle of Saipan. The 5th Amphibious Corps invaded Saipan that was being held by the Japanese. And we put about 70,000 men onto the island. Japan had the 31st Army there. And in the battle that lasted for about a month, a little over a month, pretty much Japan was wiped out to the last man. They had very few prisoners. There was a group of soldiers that lasted for almost a year afterwards before they were told that the war was over. Captain Oba survived for about a year with 46 of his men. But the 31,000 men, including the Admiral Nugamo, who was one of the masterminds behind Pearl Harbor, by the end of Saipan, they were all dead. And we had captured an island that had gotten us closer to Japan to bring the war over and it ended. So this is a story about a small group of soldiers who are holding out against World War II's largest bonsai charge. So this is going to be a very interesting movie. We'll be talking to Brandon about that film. We'll also be talking to him about his career because he's had an outstanding career. Me and Brandon, we have known each other now for, whew, man, I think 6 or 7 years. And he was one of the nicest guys you want to talk to. I met him on Twitter, and we talked about the House of Manson. And he was such a nice man and such a kind guy. A filmmaker to sit there and explain his process for that movie. Hey, Kevin, how are you? Hi, Traveler, how are you? Glad you guys are here. Feel free to share us out if you care to. So, and Brandon and I, we talked a lot of times. We talked for many different issues, and he also comes from a music background as well. So we will talk to him about that as well. Hey, Rick. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, that's Rick. I know that's Rick. I don't even have to even find out. I can see that. Let's see. Ta-da! So he's done a lot of trailblazing films as well. He's done a movie about not only Charles Manson, but he also did one on the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, who was infamously killed in 1947. They never caught the killer. There's been speculations about who it was, but they never caught the killer. And he's also, like I said, his directing and screenwriting. He's also a screenwriter as well. So he does a lot of his own stories, including Crossbreed, which ended up featuring Vivica A. Fox as the first African American actress to portray a president of the United States. Doesn't sound like much until you think about the context of it, right? I mean, you wouldn't even think about it. You just think, well, that's already been done before. But lo and behold, it hadn't. But it did in 2016. And so, again, trailblazing. This movie, one of the movies I highly recommend, and I know it's in the waves, and I've seen a lot of people do reviews of it, is The Dawn. The Dawn is a very good movie, and it has a kick at the end, nice twist at the end that people will really enjoy, and it's refreshing to see. It's refreshing to see in this, big time. Um, hey, Slasher Fred, how are you? See, yeah, I think there was Slasher Fred. I think there was. Or you know what it was? I might have been. Did he do a Black Dahlia directly, or I know he's used some stories as inspiration. Um, yeah, Brian De Palma. Yeah, he's a fantastic director too. But like I said, Brendan's his own. He's just, and his stars on the rise. He's got Battle of Saipan coming out this week, and he's got at least 3 to 4 movies coming out next year. And there's others in pre-production. One movie I will be looking forward to seeing next year is a movie called The Flood. And I mentioned that because that stars one of our old friends, Mike Ferguson, is in that movie. Hey, Bud Files, how are you? I'm enjoying your month of Thanksgivings. Uh, and let me tell you what's going on the calendar, because you guys are all here for the calendar too. So tomorrow night, I'm not sure we're going up or not. I said we might. I'm not sure. If I do. If I don't, I don't. But I will say on Thursday, the 24th, At 8 o'clock, we will be welcoming in our Kristen Welton will be here with us on the 24th of November on Thanksgiving Day. That's right. Everybody will be stuffed with turkey and waiting for cold turkey sandwiches. But after you do, come over and hang out with us. We are doing a show. We're doing a show with Kristen Welton. She is a fun channel to watch on YouTube. One of my favorite videos I've seen on the tube had her going to a coffee and tea shop called Victoria's. That was absolutely fun. So she is a very warm-hearted person, and yes, she is the love of Kevin's life. I have to mention that. But she'll be here talking with us on Thanksgiving Day. I hope that you guys will come see us. I know that now that we have no more Black Fridays, that people are going to be staying home, so you guys can hang out with us. All right. Let's see. So on the 27th, on Sunday at 6 p.m. here on my channel, here on this channel right here, we will be having the ISC midnight. We'll be back. We will be covering the movie called The Vigil. That is right here. This is the movie that we'll be covering 6 o'clock on Sunday. So if you want to watch it beforehand, I do believe it's on Amazon Prime. And you can come back and talk to us and hang out and join the conversation with us as we talk about The Vigil. That will be at 6 o'clock Eastern time here on my channel. The Midnight Society will be back on Al's channel on the 8th, on the 8 o'clock on the 27th. I don't know what we're talking about. I just know that we'll be talking about something. And then next week, the last week of November, on November 29th, we are welcoming in comic book creator, visual effects guru, film director, writer, just an all-around Renaissance man. Kevin Van Hook will be with us. He's the man who created the character Bloodshot for Valiant Comics. He also directed a fantastic vampire movie, which I enjoyed very much, called Slayer. And he has done a lot in his career, and he's going to come talk to us about that on the 29th. He's worked on some big movies, too, as a visual effects man. On the 30th, we are welcoming in artist Griffin Stone Katz will be here with us at 8 o'clock, and he is another fantastic artist as well. He's also a model as well. He models, and he is a tremendously talented artist, and he will be showing off some of his work during our interview, which I can't wait to see that. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to see if anybody catches it. There is something about Griffin. I'm going to see if anybody notices it, but I'm not going to say what it is. But this is going to be his first time on the show, but not the first time his family's been on this show. And I'll leave it right there, and you guys can figure out who we talk to. But he is his own person. We will be talking about his art, his creativity. Hey, hello, Night Fright Talk Show. Greetings. We'll be talking to Brandon Slagle here in a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and make sure. All right, let's see. All right, we're good. All right. So he'll be here on the 30th at 8 o'clock. I know I have to check all my connections, make sure that he was able to come on. And then on the 1st of December, we are kicking off December 1st. We are kicking it off big, B-I-G. We are welcoming in the horror miser Monty G will be here with us on December 1st. He, of course, Monty G from the 7 Deadly Venoms. He also co-hosts Horror Hangout with Sean Patrick Urshan, Sean and Jen. and strange. I'm not sure. Uh, I'm not sure. I know they have a rotating guest, but I know he does the horror hangout, and so well, he'll be here on December 1st, and of course we'll be talking all things horror movies about that. And so yeah, we got a lot of fun things coming up here on the channel on Eight Questions With. We're glad that you guys are here watching it. I hope that you enjoy it. Hello, New York. Hello, New York, New York gal. Forgive me. I don't know why I'm so jittery today. Good morning, New York gal Heart. Hi, Jamie. I see you up there. I see you, Jamie. Hopefully, you're feeling better. Are you getting? Are you able to? Are you able to get out and about now, Jamie? Or are you still shut down from the snow? Uh, hopefully the snow is sort of receding. Hopefully the weather is warming up enough for it to at least melt off a little bit to give you guys a chance to get out there and take care of business. We had a snowstorm earlier this week. I think we got maybe like 1.5 inches. Woo! But that's still pretty good for us. That's not bad. That's and the thing is, the thing has been it's been bitterly cold. We generally don't see these kind of temperatures in November. We don't see this until the end of January or end of December, in January and February. But last night was 18 degrees. Today was in the 40s. Tomorrow is supposed to be in the 50s. So yeah. Um, and thank you to those who came out yesterday for our special Monday show as we interviewed comedian ventriloquist April Brucker. That was a fun show. I got to tell you, that's one of the funnest shows that we've done here. Um, trem- uh, I'm so fortunate to be able to talk to some of these folks, if not all of them, because they're so much more talented than I am. So I'm always in awe of what they can do. And April's no different. Her skill set is a pretty damn amazing. All right. Uh, all right. All right. Brendan will be here shortly. That's funny too. I tell you one thing about doing interviews from folks on the West Coast. You would think that they would have the best internet service of anybody. You would think that they would. Silicon Valley is there. San Francisco, San Jose. You think all the cutting edge tech, and yet the hardest people to connect with, honestly, are the people on the West Coast. They have the most internet problems of anybody I've talked to, even more so than folks across the pond. So hopefully he'll get here quickly. Um, yeah. Hi, Anthony. How are you? Yep. Uh, I hope you have a good Thanksgiving. And there he is. So let's put our hands together and please welcome in our friend and our guest, film director, screenwriter Brandon Slagle.
Thing, so it took me a minute to figure it out and get in. Um, I didn't realize when I was opening it from the Instagram link, it kept opening up the login rather than to this. So, but I'm here now.
Yes, yes, and glad you're here. So glad you're here.
But it took a while because I've had an aversion to Zoom type things, but that's kind of the way of the world now, so I had to adapt to it.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I have to sit there and say one of the things I really enjoy about you, Brandon, um, and I love that your fact that you are dedicated to your privacy. You don't want anybody to know. You were protecting very much of your family and yourself's privacy, and you know what? People need to respect that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I certainly do. I watch myself whenever you and I talk, even when we're talking privately. I find myself really being on my toes because I respect that. I respect the fact that, just because you're a public figure doesn't mean your life is public for public viewing.
Well, thank you very much. It's it drives my mom crazy because I won't let her post pictures of her grandchild on social media, but that's just how it is, Mom.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it was really funny. It was really funny. I'm gonna have to share this. When I was talking to Devaney, I was sitting there and I'm talking with her, and I'm just going there. I'm not saying anything about anything. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about anything that I know that you wouldn't wouldn't brought up. So it's almost like talking to you at the same time with her. Um, and why not, right? I mean, you know what? Not everybody doesn't need to know everything about everybody. You know?
It's weird because I don't know. I don't understand the like fascination with it, and it seems like it's gotten more invasive with social media. I don't know. It's a strange thing, and I'm by no means am I George Clooney or anything, but the like little degrees of it I get make me really uncomfortable, which I wouldn't have guessed that would have been a thing. But it's
Uh,
strange.
but the thing is, though, Brandon, is it might be a bit of a little bit of a harder struggle now because as every film that you do that you're doing becomes bigger and bolder, more and more attention is going to be coming your way, and it's going to be a lot harder to keep yourself separated from that.
Yeah.
Is that something you've thought about?
I absolutely have, and that's completely true. It's one of those things that kind of comes with the territory, and my whole goal is to be able to do movies that reach people on a big level. I don't, I'm not like, oh, I want to do this little personal art house movie. I like big movies. I like, that's what I like. I like things that big crowds can enjoy. And unfortunately, when someone gets to that, that's one of the things that comes with it. So I guess by then I need to make sure I have a really good manager that can help me keep my head above water.
Yeah, because you were mentioning to me, you and I were talking that this was your biggest press junket yet. Saban Films, got a lot of people to talk to you,
Yeah.
and here you are, and you're like, most of the time people don't come, they don't really say anything. They'll review the film, but they're not coming to you. They're not going to they don't want to know what's going on behind the lens. But now they do, because like I said, every project you're doing is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just can't be helped. You know,
I've noticed, like I'm one of those people that tries not to really obsess over reviews because they're really sort of it's someone's opinion. It's not a end all be all. But a few of them, and actually yesterday the embargo for the one I have coming out this week, Battle For Saipan, lifted, and one of the reviews was really getting at me for using my spouse in the movie. I don't understand why someone would decide to personally attack someone like that. It comes across very unprofessional and not really. I see someone who does that as not really a reviewer, but like a gossip columnist.
Yeah, you know what? It's yeah. That's one of the questions I was gonna ask you too, and that's interesting you brought it up so early. But let's talk about that a little bit. Let's see. Everybody's saying hello to you in the chat. Hello, hello. New York Heart. I will post Brandon's information down, including his Instagram page in the description box after the show. Definitely. And I'll be posting his movie database page so you can go check out his work. Highly recommend it. Yeah, I was looking, because I do this. I was looking through your body of work, and it's not unusual. It's the John Ford effect, right? John Ford started it. He had like 100 actors on his Rolodex that anytime he went into production, he would go to his Rolodex and cast his movie based on who was in the Rolodex.
Right.
So he saw a lot of the same faces in John Ford's movies. All the way from the main stars all the way to an extra. A guy, a stunt person, or whatever. I think, and directors, they do that now. Jack Webb used to do that. Jack Webb was famous for that, even more so than John Ford, I think. I mean, he used the same people over and over and over in all his productions. One week, one guy could be a cop, and the next week you might see him again, and he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Is it because directors feel more comfortable with people they know?
Um, it's I guess I'm a little bit both ways. Like I like the challenge of cracking the nut of someone new. Um, Especially, sometimes there's some name actors I've worked with where I'll hear from people saying, "Oh, that person's so difficult," and I look at it like, "Oh, that's a challenge," and then usually, you meet them and they're fine. Um, Other than that, like, I'm surprised the review that I mentioned. I'm surprised didn't go off on the fact that I used Louis Mandylor over and over again. That's why I thought it was kind of offensive because he saw fit to center, focus on the fact that I put my wife in a few things rather than one of my closest friends. It just, but to me, it's one of those things where you know what you can expect from someone, and you already have that chemistry with them. And for instance, with Battle for Saipan, I'd met Casper Van Dien once at an event like 10 years ago, and I'd never met Jeff Fahey. Um, but getting all of those guys together and the fact that I know Lewis so well, it just created that instant chemistry. So with me, yeah, I like the familiarity, but I also like, knowing what to expect with people, and I would kind of use them as a secret weapon to, help build rapport with people when you don't have a lot of time. Because with a lot of these movies, and you probably had people say this, these types of movies, these like mid-tier action movies 30, 40 years ago, you would have 6 weeks to shoot them and a lot of pre-production. Now you have a matter of 2 or 3 weeks to shoot them and maybe 2 weeks of pre-production, so you don't really have a lot of time to get to know someone. So I feel like having someone on your team allows you to be able to build that rapport with the rest of the cast.
Let's see. People are going to be asking questions, so I'm going to go ahead and comment. So I'm going to I'm going to do my best to catch up today about them, and I'll bring them to you, and then you can let me know what you think.
Absolutely.
Our friend Jamie says she's so annoyed by supposed reviewers who really just want to do damage. I've dealt with some like that. They need to get lives. Yeah, I'm with you about that, Jamie. I'm an amateur reviewer, myself. Not a professional at all. I just write what I like, and I don't understand. I mean, unless the movie's just out and out stinker, but even then, you can still end up having fun with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of movies I can mention. You guys already know who they are, probably. Yeah, they're bad movies. They are. One guy made his movie for $220, and it looks like it. But you know what? We have fun with it. We still have fun with it. It's a fun movie. Um, but it's not. I don't think it's really constructive to just lay the whip into every single movie. And as far as this guy goes, it is extremely unprofessional to center out. Well, yeah, you put your wife in on all your movies. Have you watched her act? Because she's a hell of an actress, right? I mean,
This kid reviewed something of mine in the past, and I think just kind of has a grudge from that, and he didn't like that too. But regardless, I don't see the need in pointing that out. Actually, on the Rotten Tomatoes page for it, that particular quote is the highlight that comes up. It's just like, come on, man.
yeah, Rotten Tomatoes. I don't even. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
even think about that. Slasher Fred mentions, "Hey Brandon, your film Battle for Saipan stars Jeff Fahey, and two of the movies with Jeff Fahey I've seen are two low budget movies called Body Parts and Serpent's Lair." Man,
Yes.
Jeff Fahey is just he's amazing.
I
I've been a fan of Jeff
Body
Fahey.
Parts is the first movie that I remember seeing him in, and I made a point to tell him that when I got to know him a little bit. And of course, he got a kick on it, and he has stories from everything. He's a really cool guy, and he's one of those actors that has this kind of intimidating presence about him. But I like that because he's the type of actor that will look at each line of dialogue and feel like, well, I feel like in this situation I may not say this, but it may make more sense if this other guy says it, which kind of goes into what I say about building rapport. I think Inside Pan, he probably had like 20 extra lines that he gave to other characters, and his choice to do that was actually the right one. But he's just a real pleasure to work with and a really interesting guy. He kind of just walks the earth. And anytime I hear from him, he's in some other part of the world. He's really, like I said, he's interesting.
And of course, I was really excited when I saw the cast for Battle of Saipan because it's no secret I'm a huge, huge fan of Casper Van Dien. Starship Troopers is in my top 5 movies of all time.
Um, He said that they're doing a movies that made us on Starship Troopers for Netflix's next season. So that should be interesting. It's one of those movies like RoboCop, obviously, which Paul Verhoeven also did that. I feel like the current generation needs to experience. Maybe it's just me getting crotchety and grumpy, but I feel like RoboCop and stuff like that are kind of lost in time right now. So hopefully it can usher it into newer filmmakers and just having their minds blown.
Yeah, do you think it's do you think like fans know, like here in our little community that we have here? Let me tell you, RoboCop is huge. Everybody knows RoboCop. But so do you think that filmmakers themselves, not the general public who knows about them, but the directors themselves, do you think they've lost touch with a lot of older movies?
Sometimes when we sociably meet younger filmmakers, they're really unaware of these movies. For those of you who don't know me, I'm in my mid 40s. I know I don't look it, but I'm starting to. And those are the movies I grew up on. There's someone that Devaney had spoken to recently who didn't know who. Oh God, who was it? But he's one of those people that you just assume is a household name that everyone knows, and they've never heard of them. So maybe there's a slight generational gap there with filmmakers that to me seem like the golden age, but are probably. I think I could probably equate it to when I was 20, I didn't really know who David Lean was, but he's from as many generations back as say RoboCop is now, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Right.
It's something you
Right.
still have to find and experience, and finding new things is always a treat, or it is for me. So hopefully, you know, filmmakers who aren't aware of like him or John Woo, I feel like a lot of people aren't aware of these days. He's one of my like massive influences. Hopefully, they can. Hopefully, they get the pleasure of discovering these films and these filmmakers.
I agree with that. I mean, I'm thinking about that too, and I'm thinking about back when I was, in my early 20s, and I look back and see some of the directors back then, like Peter Weir or William Fredkin, Walter Hill. Back then they were huge names back then, and now today you don't really hear them being talked about because now so I get that. I get that. It's like sometimes we do tend to forget. You
Walter
just don't think about it.
the
Go ahead.
same release that Saipan has with limited theaters and then VOD. So it's times have changed.
Extremely so. Um, extremely. Slasher Fred is a big Jeff Fahey fan. He's mentioning this year marks the 30th anniversary of the low budget movie The Lawnmower Man, which also stars Jeff Fahey. And the movie was so much better than the short story. The short story was trash. Um, let's see. So yeah. So you mentioned you got your start though. You and I both got our starts. Behind the mic.
Yeah.
You were in a band, and I was booking bands. Um,
Yes.
so
It,
talk to us a little bit about your music. I mean, do you still get out there and rock it a little bit? And how?
I do in this room that you see here, but not out there. Um, yeah. Starting at maybe 1997, I played in a number of industrial bands as like the keyboardist or the guitarist, and then around 1999, I started my own band whose name was Die Section, two words, which is how I used to describe it back then. It was more of a new metal industrial band, and I used to go to shows and give out CDRs and stuff like that. And Wayne from Static X, rest in peace, actually took a liking to me. He said that I kind of reminded him of him a few years before, and he actually got us our manager and started shopping us around. Unfortunately, the band kind of imploded just because we were young and didn't have a lot of business sense, and I lost touch with him. And as many people know, he passed away almost a decade ago now. But yeah, it was a very interesting time, and I think a lot of the things I learned then I actually understand now. Wish I understood then, but I would have had a different life if that. Um,
Right.
yeah,
I actually got to work with Wayne. I got the book Static X right after they got picked up
yeah,
before their first record came out. So their label had them out there touring as a get to know us type of deal. So I got to book them early in their career as far as that goes. And
So
I do remember when
Fear Factory or something, if it was one of those, or Coal Chamber, one of those bands, if it was their like early stuff, I would imagine.
Yeah, I got they was Static X. I mean, when they toured,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was like they got picked up, and then I want to say it was like from Relativity or Reprise or something like that, and then they got picked up, and right before they went to record, they sent them on a West Coast tour real fast to say hi to everybody. And they were really nice people, really nice guys, great band, great band.
Wayne was probably the first so-called famous person that was nice to me, and I wish I didn't lose touch with him. So
Yeah.
Obviously it's too late.
So for someone, to me, it was really something. This is sort of the oxymoron for me. Is like, here you are as a rock singer. You're out there. You want to be noticed, right? You want all that attention, and as a rock star in a band and everything else. And yet after you segged over to movies, it was like a flip the dime, and it's like, no, that's all right. Go back.
Yeah.
Now, was there any incident that happened that caused that? Was there that you feel comfortable talking about? Was there any one incident that triggered that reaction?
It's weird because like with doing shows, we played like the smallest clubs, and then we played arenas opening for Static and Soulfly and bands like that. I was always really at ease in front of crowds, but I guess you would say there's kind of that separation, where you're on stage and they're there and you're the entertainer. Last week I was on a show where someone actually asked me about that and said, "Hey, a lot of frontmen seem to become directors," and they mentioned Fred Durst and some other people. And in a way, I think he had a point that it was almost hand in hand, where like Saipan had a crew of 200 people most of the time, and so you're delegating almost like you're on stage. But to actually answer your question, I think just I don't know. There wasn't really like one particular thing. I acted for a while between leaving music and only directing, and even that I lost the taste for like the spotlight part of it. I think part of it was I didn't like how, when I was an actor, I didn't like how other actors treated each other. I didn't like the just like kind of cutthroat competition. I always thought, okay, everyone needs a co-star. You're not the only person in the movie. But I didn't understand that kind of lack of respect to one another. But that's not really what drove me away. I guess I don't know. Maybe it's just getting older and crankier.
You mentioned you went into, after you got out of music, you segged over to acting. Was that something that was encouraged? Did someone encourage you to do it? Did someone inspire you to do it, or was it something that you saw as the next step in your career?
It was actually my original goal. I originally went to college, and I did like 20 plays in high school, and then went to college on an acting scholarship with a major in theater with an emphasis on acting, and then a double major in art, which is kind of a lot to handle. So that was all. That was what I wanted to do originally. So it's just weird and puzzling that first love that I have kind of faded. I knew that I would direct and become more of a storyteller, but I didn't know that I would, do it as completely as I did and eschew the other things.
I mean, you were a storyteller. I mean, every band's a storyteller too. So you had always been a storyteller, if you think about it.
Yeah, I guess really like one of them kind of carried over to the other. Like when I'd be on sets, I didn't actually properly go to film school, but I would constantly ask questions of the crew, and just kind of get a feel for actually how things worked. And things like photography and all of that, I always seem to have an aptitude for. But as far as like the mechanical part or the technical side of it, I learned just by observing. So, playing music sort of, got rid of any like fear of people. And then,
right.
And then acting helped carry over into directing. So each of them helped the next one.
Yeah, isn't that something? It does help you, doesn't it? When you got into music, it really did help you because you learned how to talk to people. When you do such a public thing like singing or acting, more singing than acting or directing. You do have to learn how to talk to your both your fan base, talk to promoters, talk to your peers. You do learn that quickly, and
Yeah.
you learn how to do it with no fear. You're not, like maybe the first couple of times you're nervous. You walk up to the first. I remember the first time I walked to a big band member, and I was nervous about it. I was like, okay, here I am talking to this person, but once I opened my mouth and we started talking, and then we're talking like this, and
Yeah.
it was just another person. There's no
Normal
like,
happens.
right.
I remember I was so one benefit of music was I would always get in free to everything. Like any festival or band show, I would just call our manager or Wayne or someone would put us on a list. And one of the Ozfests, I think it was the first time that Disturbed was out, they were on the second stage. I was talking to my manager, John. He had a company, for anyone who remembers that era, called bandbitch.com or streetteam.net, that did the like promotions and stuff for new bands. They would work hand in hand with the labels. Anyway, I was talking to John in I don't know, somewhere away from the stage, and this guy comes up, kind of shorter guy with a shaved head, and we just have this very like calm, intelligent conversation. And then he introduces himself. He's like, "Oh, hi, I'm Dave. I'm in this band Disturbed." And he was just this guy. It was just like anyone else you would meet anywhere. So I think a lot of the like fear or stargazing that people have is kind of mental. Granted, there are some people who do carry themselves kind of a weird way where their heads in the clouds, but most people are just people. And I
Yeah.
do that same thing whenever I work with an actor who's more known. They just want to be treated like a human being.
Yes, I say that I've said that before. The biggest thing you can do to somebody well known is just talk to them. Don't fawn. Just say hi. I'm Joe. And nice meeting you, and thank you for the work. And everything else, and just talk to them. Just normal conversation. Um, have you as a director? Let me ask you this: have you as a director, have you ever been starstruck by some of the talent you surround yourself with?
Not
You ever
really.
just
You can tell when someone has this certain presence about them. For instance, when we had Vivica Fox on Crossbreed a few years ago, she actually kind of has that thing where and like Robert Downey Jr. and some other people have it, where you're like that's a star.
right?
And people have it in different degrees, but that just certain pop, the spotlight's on them kind of thing. But in person, she's very warm, and I'd only talked to her on the phone, and I went to go say hi to her, and she just it's like seeing a friend that you haven't seen in years. She hugged me like, "Hey, how are you doing? I'm glad to be here," and stuff. But yeah, I've never gotten nervous around people.
I might get a little nervous around Vivica A. Fox. I'll be honest with you. I probably would have got a little tongue twisted. But yeah, she's pretty kick ass. I love her. I like watching her act. She's just fearless.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. New York Gal Hart says I met Philip Seymour Hoffman once in New York City during an intermission to a Broadway show. He was really, really nice. He looked just like he did in his movies. Yeah, I sure miss him. And
It's
we were talking
it's
about him last Sunday.
it's funny to mention him. My mom used to go to this artist retreat in Vermont that was musicians and stage actors, and she actually had dinner with him a number of times. And yeah, he was just an average Joe that unfortunately had some demons.
Yeah, yeah. I wish he would have overcame those. Um, wow, that's something. That's something too. I mean, directors. Like you said, you oversee a large cast. Now, for this one was 200-person crew. Was this obviously your biggest movie that you worked on as far as crew size and cast wise?
At that point, yeah, and then followed by I did another one, and this was in Thailand too, so most of the crew was Thai, although most people in Thailand speak English. Um, and then the next one I did there, called The Flood, that comes out in the spring, was about the same, if not more. but yeah, I'd been building up to that. So, and everyone there just kind of keeps their head down and works, and it's just a really strong work ethic and just goes. So, yeah, there's no fear of crowds there.
Now, one of my favorite stories I met, and this is, I don't know about how you feel about it, but for me anyway, because this is my first impression, you and I met on Twitter.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, you and I, and we talked about House of Manson. And I came away from that so impressed, and you were so kind, and you had two professional movie critics, and you had me, and all three of us were talking to you about the movie, and I was so impressed with how you handled yourself. You didn't, it was such a courteous and such a professional discussion, and and I really was really impressed with that. I was just like, wow, this guy is cool as ice. And it was, and I remember telling you, like, at first, because Manson movie, I really wasn't a fan, but at the end of the conversation, I was. And and then I said, now I got to go see this movie. Now I got to go see it. Because he knows what he's doing. He respects the whole story, which was really important to me, because that's one thing I caught more than anything else was you respect the story. I mean, you're not going to exploit it. You're onto exploitation.
Yeah.
And see, that's where Tarantino blew it, because he exploited it and you didn't. And that's why that's why I really would like to see your film, and also the Black Dahlia. I'd like to see that as well. But how do you feel about when, as a director, here you are, you're coming up, you want to tell a story, but someone comes up to you and says, well, we want you to tell a story too, but it's a true story.
Yeah.
Is it more difficult doing your own original story, or is it more difficult to you to do a historical film?
The reason that with Manson I was so open to people being reluctant to watch it was because it was actually Devaney's idea to do, and I was reluctant to do it because I didn't immediately see any value or reason to do it. I figured it had been told numerous times. I'm not really someone that thinks that you're giving them publicity, especially because most of the movies are generally a negative portrayal. But I just felt, what else can you say about it?
Right.
And she told me a few things to look at. She told me to look at how there's still young people today who subscribe to, or at the time still subscribe to, Manson's ideas. And that, it's powerful that, 30 odd years after, he was tried and convicted, there were people that were still following him just the way they would have before.
Yeah.
So I started doing research on Manson, and I remember when I knew I wanted to actually do it, I was watching old newsreel footage of when he was on trial, and he's being brought around a corner, and the camera just sort of lunges at him, kind of like a paparazzi. And you didn't see the kind of raving Manson. You saw a human who, for a moment before he kind of put himself on, was vulnerable. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, that's the take I can have, because he obviously had to be charming or human in some way, or else there was no way he was going to get these people in the era of hippies to follow him the way that they did. So once I saw the human behind that, I felt that there was room to tell a story, and not, do all the retreads where they portrayed him simply as like a raving boogeyman. But to actually answer your question, there's very select true stories that I'd like to do. I know there's some people who are all in. That's, they love telling historical things, but I'm kind of, two sides of the coin with that. Saipan, Battle for Saipan is actually very loosely inspired by a, a dentist who was stationed on the island of Saipan as a surgeon, who during the final raid on Saipan, and I know a lot of people, this is something I think is kind of lost in history now, like RoboCop, they don't know a lot about the Pacific Theater part. They just know about Nazis and whatnot in World War II. But anyway, final charge from the Japanese army to the civilians and the American army, he protected his hospital outpost and had killed something like 96 invading soldiers. And I remember seeing that on like a History Channel special or something. I thought, wow, there's something interesting there. And I'm not really like a war buff or anything. You know, it's not like the material I would immediately gravitate towards. But I just felt that that was a great human story about just a regular guy overcoming insurmountable odds. But I never thought I'd get to make a movie about it. And luckily, Saipan's producer, Damon Helen, came to me looking for World War II pitches. And I told him that there was this pitch, this story that was sort of like, could be sort of executed like The Raid, but on the island of Saipan. And he was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. We got to do that. And he sent it to the distributors. And a week later, we were doing it. I just couldn't directly base it on Ben Solomon.
Yeah, I remember reading about that story. And Saipan. Yeah, I'm a World War II buff, so I know the Saipan stories, and I was really glad to see it because, you know, that's something, you know, you don't see a lot of. You don't really see that anymore. Yeah. You know, World War II movies, you know, at all. It's like it seemed like it ended almost like with Saving Private Ryan. It's like as soon as that movie came out, it just seemed that would be the end of it. And we really hadn't had a major film, you know, like, and we've had some minor films, some, you know, like they retold the Indianapolis story a couple of times. You know, Dunkirk, I think maybe Dunkirk was the last major World War II story. Yeah. And that there he goes in the European theater. I think the last thing I saw for the Pacific was the Pacific. But that came out in 2008.
I guess Hacksaw Ridge was the Pacific, I believe.
Was that 2012 then, maybe something like that? 13.
It's been at least more than 5 years ago. But yeah. But regardless, most World War II stories are about Europe.
Yeah, we don't ever really get the Pacific War anymore. And it was so important because I was telling the story before you got here about you know, because, you know, the story is so important, and you know, you know, I think it's definitely needs to be told, and I'm glad you did. Now, of course, now you mentioned you've talked to people who have, you know, who are nitpicky about certain details, like, you know, a lot of the buffs, you know, they don't mind this, they don't mind a low budget for a movie. What they care about is accurate equipment and uniforms. They understand the budgetary restraints. But boy, I'm sure has this happened where you've done a movie where you maybe didn't have quite the right equipment or whatnot, and some fan will come up to you and sit there and say, hey, the patch is supposed to be on the right side, not the left side.
No one does it in person, but online they certainly do. Actually, when Saipan's trailer debuted a couple of months ago, there's a scene in the trailer where Louis Mandylor is speaking to Jeff Fahey about, you know, the incoming threat and whatnot. And they pointed out that the vest that Louis is wearing actually wasn't designed until, I think, 1958. So that's the first, like, most direct time that's happened. And I'm sure that there's other small inaccuracies like that. I mean, but it's, to me, this particular movie is more based on the characters and their bond with one another rather than, you know, beat by beat facts. So I think there's naturally a little bit of artistic liberty, but also maybe the costume designer just didn't realize that it was inaccurate. So,
well, I just look at it this way. I mean, I just look at it this way. I'd rather see the movie made with baubles like that than the movie not being made. Period. You know, that's how I look at it. You know, I'm not a stickler. I mean, you know, the way I look at it, you know, as long as they're not flying, you know, as long as they're not flying, you know, F-36s, you know, or F-86s over there, then I'm tickled. You know, as long as it, you know what I'm saying. It's like, as long as that happens, you know, I'm okay. You know, hey, wait a minute, that Japanese tank looks like an Abrams. Wait a minute.
If there's not a stealth bomber in a movie that takes place in the 40s or the 60s, we're good.
Now, you cover everything though, Brandon. I mean, what was your first love as far as when you did acting? Did you like to do like science fiction, horror, drama, thrillers? What you know? What genre did you like acting in that you took with you to when you started screenwriting and directing?
I was probably really equally torn between horror and action because I grew up loving both. Um, I prefer action, even though I have a lot of horror in my background. It took a while to get to the point where I had the means and the resources to be able to do something that I felt was proper. But yeah, now definitely action. Although there's definitely still a love there for what I grew up watching and things like
Um, okay, so I asked you this question because every time I mention this movie, it's like I'm a vampire.
that.
I've noticed that I'll say, "Hey, Brandon, tell me a little bit about this." Get away from me, get away.
Oh,
But I want to ask you this because I thought it was really interesting with your reaction. Um, and I'm only going to say this because, all right, because I'm going to admit something here. Not that anybody doesn't already know it, but um, I want to talk a little bit about Dead Sea, just a little bit, just a little, just a little, just a
actually,
little.
that was almost a decade ago. And I've done other stuff, so feel free.
Okay, okay. Well, because first of all, I got to give you credit because you casted Alexis O'Connell in there.
It's full of real people, you
Yes.
know, rather than well, there's a scene in the movie that is the distributor asked us to put in where there's a bunch of bikini girls on a pontoon boat. But other than that, I wanted it to be real salt of the earth type people.
Uh, and that's anything that Alexis is. That is it. That is it.
Yeah.
So I've actually had the pleasure of interviewing her too, and I think she's just like the bee's knees. She is yeah. Um, when you cast that movie, when you did that, my question to you was, if directors could go back among their body of work and just take that one film, that the one that they don't, like, man, I just wish I could have did so much differently. If I wish I could have made so much choices with,
Yeah.
the one film that just got away, so to speak. What would you change about that movie? How would you go and salvage that movie, knowing what you know now versus what you knew back then?
So it's been long enough with this one that I can speak really freely about it without threat of lawsuit because the company involved is bankrupt and out of business. so
Cut
um,
loose.
so it began as a movie we were raising money for ourselves. And while I hinted at this a minute ago, while we were raising money, a distributor had interest in it and made a deal to actually buy it. So it became kind of like my first like work for hire movie in a way. But we all went into it with really good intentions to tell this really kind of gritty, dark story. And of course, it's really ambitious. For those of you who don't know, the movie is about a small desert town where every 30 years they have to offer a sacrifice to, and this is going to sound silly at this point, because it's going to sound like Asylum, but it wasn't executed that way. Every 30 years they have to offer a person as a sacrifice to this lamprey like creature. Otherwise, they're going to have like a streak of bad luck. So I thought that we were making this like mythic type story, but the distributor wanted something that had the girls in bikinis. That's why in the pacing of the movie, that scene kind of happens at a strange time because it was really shoehorned in. Um, so my vision of the movie was all this stuff with the town and the meth dealers and the PTSD that they have from being in Afghanistan and stuff like that. So that's why it's sort of a pseudo action movie as well. So I think looking back now, I probably wouldn't go so heavy handed with some of it. Um, I'd find a better balance in the tone, and also knowing some of the business things to look out for. I would anticipate shady distributors. So I I took a lot of criticism because you don't see the creature a lot. So like if you go to Amazon, you look at all the reviews and say this creature movie has no creature. Thing is, it
Uh,
was supposed to, and the distributor actually had a pretty impressive one built, and they never shipped it to us. So we really kind of last minute scrounged together the parts of the creature that you do see, and did the best that we could with what we had to finish it.
Now, was the creature on screen for at least 30 seconds?
Probably 15.
Okay, that's still 13 seconds more than the creature in Pyewacket. So you're good. You're solid.
I think at the end you kind of see it tread water and come up, and you see the teeth come out. And there's a couple of scenes where you see smaller lampreys eating people, kind of like a piranha would.
Sure.
I wanted it to be just really brutal and evocative, and I think I was still kind of finding my footing, like I said, with tone and stuff like that. So I guess it would be just to not be so trusting, hoping people are going to do what they say they are going to do, and stuff like that. There were other problems with it too. For instance, the guy at the distribution company that was the sales guy said that we should export it, and this is going to get technical, at 29.97 frames, which ended up screwing up everything for VOD. And it just created this big mess of, two immovable objects butting heads between us and the distribution company. The thing actually sold really well, even though VOD was really sparse. I don't know. I would just hope to anticipate more things if I could redo it.
Yeah, I just like, I love the cover of it. The cover is wicked. The cover is a badass cover. And of course, like I said, the cast is, and I was just like, I'm just, like, yeah, I was excited. And then, then when you started saying, then I'm like, wow, okay, now is it one of those things for a director? Sometimes a director will do that. They'll sit there and say, man, if I could just go back and do this one movie over, if I could just go back, because I think every director, hell, every actor too, they had that one performance where they wish they could go back and redo it, like play it differently, come at it differently. But distributors, yeah, it's dicey out there now, isn't it?
Yeah, so many of them, they're just numbers and algorithms, so they don't understand why something may or may not work, if it doesn't match, a graph that they have in their office.
But that's not Saban, though. Saban's not like that.
Yeah. Another thing Dead Sea is, once we submitted a cut, they didn't even really give notes or anything. They just pushed it out, and I feel like the movie probably could have had another pass in editing. Something interesting about it, since you asked about redoing it, I have no idea who actually owns the rights to it. I don't know if we do or this company that went bankrupt does, and if they went bankrupt, who bought those assets. So I actually at one point recut the movie and remastered it, but I don't know if anyone can do anything with it. And it's just it has some extra scenes that I didn't put in it that I wish I did, that I think help the characters. And it's still dark and kind of humorless, but I think it's a little more consistent than the one that was released.
And I love the fact you went back there. I love the fact you went back there to redo that.
I used to have a post-production job, and when I had free time, I would experiment with things and learn. I like to know as much about different pieces of equipment and stuff as I can. So I would remaster one of my movies so that I could learn color grading and stuff like that, or sound. And things.
Now, do you do your own editing yourself?
Do I do what? I'm sorry.
Do you do your own editing?
I've done some editing under various pseudonyms, but not anymore.
And if you do have an editor, if you do hire an editor, do you hire editors who are directors?
So the editor for Battle for Saipan is also a director and a DP. He and I ended up developing a really good rapport because we were fans of the same things. We had the same influences. So it's always good to be able to have that, almost like shorthand with someone where you don't have to over-explain why you feel this works, because they've probably been in that same situation before and already know what your answer is.
I only say that because I have a friend of mine named Sean Kane, and he's a director. And
I know.
Right, yeah, Sean's awesome, and the thing is, I was, because when we're talking, and he's also an editor, and I thought about that, and I'm going like, man, that's what I would want. As a director, I would love to have a director who has editing skills to come in there because they're going to see what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
They're gonna and because a lot of editors come in there and they're just like, okay, because they don't, but that's what they are. They're just editors. They're not directors. They don't see the story quite like you do. And
Something I've learned with different editors is there's some that feel the need to use, like, let's say you shoot a ton of footage, you overcovered everything, they feel the need to use every bit of that, when sometimes the simpler way is actually what works better with, say, fewer cuts or fewer, cutting here, 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 and here. Let's just keep it here and here. Um, so it's really something where, like you said, the story should guide it. If the story calls for a million cuts, sure. But if it doesn't, and if the movie is designed in a certain way where camera movement and such is like cutting, then you don't need to go overboard using every bit of footage that was shot.
right, right. Um, Now I want to ask you, because I want to talk a little bit about the Dawn because I was very impressed with that movie. That movie was very impressive.
It's one of the ones I like.
Yeah, that's a very impressive movie. I love the twist. I thought the twist was great. Um, I thought Devaney was. I thought she kicked ass. One of the coolest things I always like to look for, well, especially because to me it's always cool when you see a really beautiful actress get their hands dirty. There's just something really cool about that. Like they're not afraid to get, there's some actresses that they just want to be seen as always glamorous and in the best light possible and everything else. But then there's the others like Vivica A. Fox, your wife. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying. They're not afraid to get their hands dirty. Uma Thurman, that type of deal. Um, I really enjoyed that movie. And like I said, I thought the ending was never saw it coming. Never saw it coming. I was sitting there going like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll be damned. And I never, and I thought that movie was really fun, and it did really well for you,
Yeah.
internationally wise.
Yeah. So domestically, a company called Vertical Entertainment put it in theaters on digital, and Lionsgate did the DVD, and then it was sold in, I forget every place, and it's hard to keep track of it sometimes. But I don't know if it's really cool to say now, given certain world events, but it was actually in the top 5 in box office in Russia and Belarus when it debuted there. So,
And then lasted. You had a nice run. I think it was like in the top 5 for like 7 or 8 weeks. I think. Yeah, you had a great run.
And I was glad to be on Box Office Mojo.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was cool. There's some people that don't like it because it's a little slow for them. But I'm someone who, not every movie has to be like a breakneck speed. Not every movie has to be, plotting, and the pacing of the movie should be dictated by the story. And I feel that that's a movie where the story allows it to breathe, and it is slower, more tension-based storytelling than something like Saipan that moves very quickly.
Now that movie, I mean, considering the subject matter, to me, what's really impressive about it, because that you're able to come in, do the movie, as far as you wrote this, you had the story, and you came up with a fresh look at it, at a subject matter that has been grounded to dinosaur dust. Yet you came up with something incredibly fresh, on a different take on it. I was more impressed with that because that's got to be just like super hard. It's like you're sitting there, you're screenwriting it, and you're going like, well, how do I make this so like, so we don't hear the same old, like, oh, not this again, which you didn't hear, which no one has heard, because nobody knew until the last frame what exactly had happened. Because anybody who tells me, oh yeah, I guessed that movie right away, no, you didn't. No one did. No one did.
There's breadcrumbs there. For instance, the black hand that comes out of the shadows and stuff like that ties into the twist. Which, by the way, I forgot if I said this, but the twist was Devaney's idea. I feel like the film works with or without it, but the people that are game with it, they're like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
it does make sense. Yeah, I guess I'm not big on with projects like that playing the tropes really. Just because it's a nun movie or it's a dun 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 without spoiling the twist movie. I didn't feel the need to just use that as a crutch. I still wanted it to be its own thing and maybe do some things that you haven't seen in other movies and make it more cerebral or just mental in someone's head. That's spoilery. Um, but yeah, I didn't want to, say for instance, if it was a slasher movie, I wouldn't have had it set in a camp and kill someone every 7 or 8 minutes. I would have done it differently. So
Right.
hopefully I did it in a way that was unique to me.
I thought it was great. That's one of the movies that I like talking about, as far as that goes, because I like supernatural horror. And so, when I saw it, I was just like, yeah, I liked it. And you know what? Most people in the horror, who follow horror, they really don't mind a good slow burn. They don't. I mean, because it's always much more fun, as far as have the suspense building up, the mystery building up, and it did. The dawn hit its mystery and told its mystery at such a nice pace. I mean, you really paced that movie really well, and you like, I just watched Shutter Island.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Scorsese. I knew the end of that movie was going to happen within 20 minutes. 20 minutes, that movie was over for me because I already knew. He didn't even try to hide the mystery. He was just like, all of a sudden he shows DiCaprio, start tripping out, and it's like, oh, okay, well now we know what's going on here. And the movie had just started. And it's a 2 hour and 25-minute movie, and you've already told your ending 20 minutes into it. With the Dawn, you didn't know that until almost to the last damn frame. That's making a movie. That's keeping your audience. And in Shutter Island, that's just a case of overrated, because it's like, how the hell can you make that? And it's such a fundamental mistake.
Yeah.
It's such a it's like.
Hopefully the one can continue to have people discover it. I know a lot of people look at movies as something that doesn't last much beyond like the opening weekend and then the few weeks after that, but that's not really what should define the success of a movie. It's longevity.
No. Let me ask you this question, because I mean, yes. Okay. Sorry, the cheetah's hamming it up. Let me ask you this question, as a director and whatnot. So, like like you were talking about distributing earlier. So, a lot of movies are, and let me know how you feel about this. A lot of movies, we have stores around the country called Dollar Tree, right?
Yeah.
So, what they call waves. And what they do is there's all this excess movies are out there. They're being sold for $1.25. Now I saw, like I seen the Dawn there.
Yeah.
To me,
Crossbreed too, I've seen.
not Crossbreed. I haven't seen Crossbreed there. I've seen the Dawn, and I've seen Dead Sea.
Yeah.
But as far as that goes, is it more important for you to me, it's like, is it good that a movie, maybe it's run past its shelf life, like it's not going to be kept on a shelf anymore, like at a Target or a Walmart or whatnot. Is it okay for you to have your movie sold like in a place like Dollar Tree, where it's going to be exposed to a lot more, like a whole new generation of watchers? Or do you feel like, wow, that sort of cheapens the movie, and I don't really particularly care that they did that for me?
No, I think it's better to have them sold than sitting in a warehouse somewhere. Um, it's funny. The company that I was doing post for actually does the aggregation for a lot of those Dollar Tree bins. So they would get movies from that they had distributed, or like a company like New Image Millennium had distributed, and some of them I actually remastered to go to Dollar Tree a few years ago. But anyway, no, I mean that's how you discover things. It's sort of equal to, there's not really video stores anymore, but as a teenager and in my 20s, I loved seeking out and discovering new things that
Yes.
were 10 years old at that point that I probably wouldn't have discovered otherwise. That's why
Yeah.
some Tubi is so good, because Tubi, they're not really like micromanaged, curated like say Shutter or even like first run things like Vudu and Google Play are, because you can go and find things that you haven't seen anywhere in decades on Tubi because someone got the rights and they sold their library to them. So that sense of discovery, it doesn't happen so much now, and I kind of miss it. I miss going through like St. Mark's Place in New York City looking for like this like Biohazard's first album or something. That's something
Right.
actually. Um, and or like an album that has a band member, their previous band. I used to love searching for things. So I think that like Dollar Tree Bargain Bin is sort of like the modern version of that, or Tubi is. Um, Obviously, it's a bit quicker now. I remember searching for years for Night of the Living Dead and never finding it because the rights were so screwy. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool to have that some way to still find new things that you may have missed.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love the blind. I bought my copy of the Dawn at a video store too. That's where I bought my copy. I came out at No Longer Family Video, rest in peace. But that's where I got my copy at. I got my copy at the video store. I was like, this is cool. This is like, and the thing what it was is like I asked for it too. I
Yeah,
asked, when it got released, I went to them. I said, can you guys get copies of the Dawn? And they said, yeah, we can. And so, a couple weeks later, there it was. And then I just sat there and I waited until I was able to buy it, and then I bought it.
that's where kids these days will never know. I remember when I was in college, I got really into the band KMFDM, and you couldn't just go to the store and find KMFDM albums. You would have to have them special ordered,
Yeah,
or just any. I was really into like electronic and industrial music, like Frontline Assembly and Skinny Puppy and like Wax Trax, Network, Cleopatra, who I did a movie for. But that I guess, yeah, like I said, I don't want to repeat myself, but I used to love just that kind of frustration in finding and looking for something and not being able to find it, and then you do.
yeah. There's something about that. I agree. Because sometimes, so like, now, but the thing is, with the way the physical media is now we're doing that for brand new films. Now, like, one of the things I asked you was, will Battle of Saipan get a physical release? And you're going like, you hope so.
Yeah.
And it's like, before it'd be like, when I thought about Saban and Lionsgate, they were staples at the video store. Oh my gosh, I have so many Saban films, so many
Yeah.
Lionsgate Saban films, and EFO, and there's one other one that is like subdivision of Lionsgate. I have so many of their movies. They just
Um,
come out there, and I just pick them up, and I love them all. Olga Kurylenko was in a lot of those movies. As soon as I saw Olga, bam, it's mine. Nikki Whalen, all that, bam,
it's in
yeah.
actually, you can't see it because this room is dark, but I still have shelves of Blu-rays. And up until recently, I would still buy everything, and then I realized I didn't have room for them.
Oh, running out of space too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Saban did Paramount for this. They have a deal with Paramount, just like they had with Lionsgate. So when people ask me if it's getting a physical release, and a few people have, not just yourself, I'm like, I think so. It would make sense if there is, but the people at Saban have only told me theaters and digital. Um, so I assume there will be, because I know a lot of war enthusiasts like physical media,
Yes.
but I haven't heard.
Yes. Well, I so far what I've discovered, I don't know if this is true or not, but this is so far across my fingers anyway. But every movie that has been released at the theater has gotten a physical release. That's so that's good, as long as it gets a physical release. As long as it plays at a theater, chances are high.
Yeah.
A lot of movies are just strictly made straight for streaming. And then you're not gonna then you have to hold your breath,
Yeah.
if it gets it or not.
It's weird seeing like a movie that you liked on a streaming service that was kind of made exclusively for that, and not being able to actually get a copy of it in your hands.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it, and I don't understand that either, because it's like, why aren't because to me it's sort of, and part of it is the attention span. It's like an insult to people's attention span. It's like, we don't feel like you can have an attention span long enough to go out there and buy the damn thing, right? So we're going to show it to you on stream. Then that way, because you're not going to remember it as soon as the stream goes off. That's not true. I mean, I think a lot of people who watch streaming services, I'm sure that they sit there and like, you know what, I'm going to write this down. I'm going to go on Amazon. I'm going to go on the movies company. I'm going to see if I can find a copy of that. I like get a copy of that, and then they can't find it. Like especially all the recent stuff like Disney has done or Paramount Plus has done. You're just not getting it released anymore. And I think that's going to come back to bite people in the ass. I think
Yeah.
they're going to. I think they resent it already. Because I know I do. I want to be able to get this movie. I want to be able to get the Battle of Saipan. I don't want to sit there and have to stream it. I don't want to just stream it. I want to be able to watch it whenever I want to watch it. Not when it
goes down. What if there's a storm and internet goes down for your county and you really want to watch this movie but you can't because you have it on Fandango? Yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about. I'm excited for this. So I want to hear some. I want to hear a couple of fun stories because about how you met Damon, because Damon is like, he's a hell of a guy.
He's a friend of mine, James Cullen Bressick, young filmmaker, that is a real hustler. He with Damon in Thailand about 10 years ago called Pernicious, and they became good friends. And Damon went to work with other directors, and then he was asking for suggestions for different directors for different types of movies, and James had mentioned me and a few others, and closer to 2 years ago now, I think we sort of were starting to lightly collaborate between James, myself, Damon, and Damon's sales partner Jordan. And there were other movies that we had talked about doing that it may still happen in the future, but when there was a need for a war movie, it's sort of like that's what kicked it in gear. And since I did Saipan for it, he was very happy with it. I will say that actually, while we were shooting, originally the movie was supposed to be in Shout Factory, and he decided to put it through Saban instead because he felt it was better suited for Saban.
Yeah.
And since that, since we did Battle of Saipan, which is just shy of a year ago, it feels like a lot longer. I did another movie where a director dropped out called The Flood that a good friend of mine named Chad Law and his writing partner Josh Ridgway wrote. Anyone who knows mid-level action films probably knows Chad's name. And then I've actually also written a number of films for Damon as well. I wrote another World War II movie that's loosely inspired by true events called 3 Days in Malay that Louis Mandylor directed. And then I did some writing on a movie that Damon produced called The Midway Point, which is, for a total change of pace, is a coming-of-age teen drama with Thorne Birch and Alexander Daddario's sister and Wes Studi and Julie Ben. She's the one from Dexter, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then right now they're actually shooting another one that I don't know if I should announce it because it's not really announced, but with Rampage Jackson and Jonathan Rhys Meyers that Lewis is also directing. And then I'll probably do some more stuff with Damon next year. So it ended up being a really productive, consistent relationship.
Yeah, he's a go-getter.
Yeah.
He's and you just feel like he's already talking about the new movie with Rampage.
Yes.
He's posted pictures on Instagram.
Yeah.
So you're safe. He's I have nothing but respect for him too, because he just is always on the go, and I love the cast that he gathers. Now, do you collaborate with your executive producers on casting, or is that between executive producers and the casting director? Because I feel like you have more input into casting than most directors do.
It's a little bit of both. For instance, with Saipan, the name actors had to be desirable to the distributor. Lewis, I obviously brought, and I think that came from just Damon saying, "Hey, what actors are you actually friends with that we can go to easily?" And Lewis is, of course, the first one that I said. And then Jeff and Fahey and Casper and Lewis all have the same manager, so that kind of became like a package deal.
Nice.
Nikki Whalen he had worked with before in a movie called Maneater. So he had offered her the Flood. And then, of course, I got to have Lewis and everything, apparently. And then Casper is back in that one, too. I think it's like a little bit of like suggestion and also like who works for the sale. The sale, I mean, not the sale.
So you mentioned Saban. Saban has that been has that been the best distributor that you've worked with? Because they just seem to have it on the ball. They put out so much content at such breakneck speed, but the movies all seem to be doing really, really well, and they have such strong casts. Have they been was that easy for them? I mean, they didn't give you notes or anything, right? They didn't come there and say, "Yeah, we need 20 more explosions here or there." They just
Right.
left you the hell alone, didn't they?
So there's very light rules that you kind of have to play by for these movies that are more or less pre-sold. Like you need to open with some sort of action and something needs to happen every 10 minutes or so. Um, I see that kind of thing as a challenge, whereas some people might say, oh, it's messing with my vision. But I'm like, okay, well, let's see how I can get the characters where they need to be so there is more action in the next 10 minutes. This other movie I did with Lewis that's actually being distributed by Uncorked Entertainment, that was a requirement too, that something had to happen every 5 or 10 minutes. So that's really been the only thing I have to adhere to, is just making sure that those bullet points are taken care of, which I have no problem doing. But as far as really particular notes, there have been like little notes that we went back and forth with Saipan and the Flood. In Saipan, we had a cut, and then the editor and I thought, man, well, maybe we'll put these two fights together. But it was also my idea to split them apart, and the producers preferred that. And now I look at it, I'm like, yeah, that was the right choice. So it's still good to have those other people, kind of in your head, just making sure you don't get too caught up in something. Because sometimes when you know something really well, you won't see the flaws. But that's all good, and that's just part of collaboration.
Hmm. So what's now next year? You got the Flood coming out. That's and you're working on 3 other movies at the same time, right? You got two, I think 3 are already done, right? Three of your top releases.
So
you got the Flood coming out, and then you got 3 other movies that are coming. Breakout, and you just got done releasing Frost.
Yes.
So talk to us a little. Yeah, talk to us a little about Frost, because that was you and Devaney, right? That was her story, and you shot it.
So I got really lucky. Before the pandemic, there were some things I was supposed to do that just got canceled, and producers were like, "Peace, we don't know if we'll ever do these." So in 2021, James Bresick actually came to Devaney and myself with this like true story about a girl in China who was pregnant and stranded in a snowstorm. And he pitched it to Cleopatra Entertainment. It's part of Cleopatra Records, which is one of those record labels I grew up listening to.
Yeah, me too. I did some of their bands, Exorcist.
When it's funny going to their office, the CEO Brian and I would talk less about the movie we were making and more about like he would just like fall out of the seat like, oh, you remember the Black Box? I'm like, yeah. Probably 3 people out there still remember that besides me, but it was basically a compilation album of industrial and goth bands.
But do you remember Exorcist?
I don't.
Oh my God. There's another band I was gonna ask you. Do you remember Babyland? Do you remember those guys?
I remember the name. Yeah.
Oh man, those guys are freaking phenomenal. Oh my gosh. That was one of my funnest. Well, some of these guys have heard this story before. I'll tell you this real quick music story for you. So it was my first club I was booking, and I had this rock band from a touring band from Canada called the Sexuals, and they're nice college music, college radio band, whatnot, typical setup band, drums, bass, guitar. And then I get a phone call saying that there's this band named Babyland, and they needed a gig because one of the gigs got canceled, and could they come out and play for me? And I was like, sure, why not? Because I love industrial music, right? I'm like, hell yeah, industrial's cool. So so they came over, and they set up their show, and oh my God, it was amazing. It was just so good. But I had them in main support,
Yeah.
not headlining. The headliner was the Essentials,
Yeah.
and everybody was just blown away by Babyland. It was just like crazy.
Yeah.
So we're all there. People were talking to them, trying to put all their stuff away. We'll get the Essentials up there. The crowd's still buzzing about the Babyland set. First and only time I ever saw this happen, Brandon, but a band quit. They just quit. They got into the third song, and then all of a sudden, the string broke, and the guy says, "Well, my string broke on my guitar. We can't do anything else." They just couldn't follow through. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. I just knew I was going to just help out a band on the road. If I had known what I had known then, I would have put Babyland as the headliner. Knowing that.
Every time you hear about these bands that people don't want to follow, but you rarely ever hear about them really not following.
No, they played for 3 songs and they quit because nobody's watching them. Even the fans that came out to watch them weren't watching them. They were back there buying merch from Babyland. I felt so bad. I was going to go back to the Frost. I mean, now where did you shoot that film at? Now, was that on location?
Yes. However, it wasn't really snowing. So Frost is a story for people who don't know. It came out about a month and a half ago from Cleopatra. It's a story about a young woman who is 7 months pregnant and who rekindles her relationship with her father before she gives birth. Father's played by our friend Vernon Wells, who people know from The Road Warrior or Weird Science or Commando. And while they're making amends, they're going on a fishing trip and they accidentally run off the road, are knocked unconscious, and by the time they wake up, the woman Abby is pinned in the car by a branch, and the car won't start, and the father Grant goes for help. And once again, Abby is pregnant, and it starts snowing, and hijinks ensues. But to answer your question, we shot it about an hour north of LA, in not really a park, but a place called Mount Pinos. That's close to or right across from the Kern County border. Kern County is where Bakersfield is. We shot it in March of 2021, and even though it was cold and there'd be frost sort of on the grass in the morning, most of the time we actually shot in like 60-degree weather with a snow machine.
Yeah, sort of like shooting a Christmas movie in July.
Yes.
But you got to work with a real wolf. You and Devin got to work with a real wolf, though.
Yes.
Was that, how as a director, that's got to be, anytime you work with live animals like that, that's got to put extra pressures on your shoulders, doesn't it? I mean, it's a whole different. It's not to be cute or anything, but it's a whole different animal when you have an animal on set.
Yeah. With animals and with children, you're only given like a limited amount of time that you have with them. Like with children, you can only shoot like 8 hours, and it's the law. With animals, they once they're over it, they're over it. So we shot every shot of the wolf, I think, within like 2.5 hours or so. But this wolf was probably the most experienced person in the Casper crew. He's part of an animal sanctuary in Ventura County. He's been on what's that show Jason Momoa has on Apple TV with the snow? He's been at Brazen or something like that.
Okay, I remember that. Yeah.
He's been in that. He's been in Game of Thrones. I think he's been in one of the Bourne movies or something like that with Matt Damon. So this is a very seasoned wolf. So he was very sweet and really nice and cordial. He didn't sit in his trailer and demand, take out the M&Ms or anything like that. So it wasn't a lot of time, but it was just super smooth because the trainers and the wolf were just so good at what they do.
Now, has that happened to you, Brandon? Have you ever had to fire an actor from one of your productions?
I fired crew, but not actors. But I won't go into that.
Yeah, I just came to them going like, how does a director do that? Is it just one of those things where you go up to them and say like, you know what, maybe it's not working out this project, maybe we'll see each other on the next project.
So the good thing is usually the producer does that, so I get to play the good guy.
Oh,
but
okay.
I have personally fired someone on a movie, but I won't say anything
No,
beyond.
no, no. Yeah, I just wanted to know if you've ever had to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gotta be uncomfortable.
And it was for the best, and this person thought we weren't going to finish the movie, which is very strange. But
They
yeah,
thought they were going to finish because he left.
yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
That's the thing is, and I'm sure you've probably heard this before. Everyone is completely irreplaceable,
yes.
so don't
Yeah.
be a douchebag.
Except the director. I guess. Well, no, I guess directors can too.
Well,
Though
yeah,
I don't. Though you don't rarely ever see that. Um, I guess that's what the term creative differences, right? That's when things don't get, things have stress on a set. That's when they had come up with that. Um, but you know what though? I think you've gotten to a place now that everybody knows that you're, like with Crossbreed, you cast Vivica A. Fox as the first woman, person of color to ever play a president.
Mhm.
Um, it was just like it was sort of surprising when you heard that it was the first time, and you're really thinking about that, going like, has it really been the first time? I mean, there has never been one before, and then it hasn't been, and it's
The
sort of
funny thing,
shocking. It's sort of
that
shocking.
wasn't even our intention. We
No, of
we
course,
just because we liked her, and then after there was an announcement that she was cast in like Hollywood Reporter, and I forget who it was exactly, but it may have actually been in the Hollywood Reporter article. They did their due diligence and found out that she was actually the first cinematic in a movie, because Alfred Woodard played the president in a TV show, uh, African American female president. Um, we had no idea, but it's yeah, it ended up being a great thing.
yeah, a nice slice of history. Definitely puts you in. People won't forget that. I mean, that's the important thing. Plus, the movie's fun too.
It
Um,
I feel like it's one where I think a lot of people didn't really get the joke because it wasn't as well received as I thought it would be or hoped it would be. But Crossbreed is essentially, and you probably already know this, it's a tribute basically to sci-fi and action movies from the '80s, especially movies made by
right,
Cameron. So, and
right.
it's much kind of shot and designed to really be something that more or less could have been released by them back in the day. So to me, I think it's clever as hell. But if you're not in on the joke, it may or may not work for you. Um, but yeah, but it accomplishes what it was supposed to do, and that's really the goal of most movies.
I see we're running. We're about ready to hit the tipping point here. So I'll ask you one last question before we go. Um, so what do you do for fun, Brandon? Like when you're not making movies, what do you yourself like to do for fun?
I spend a lot of time working. In the past year and a half, I chased my child around. That's fun. Um, I am a big fan of retro video games and fighting games in particular, like
Okay.
not just Street Fighter 2, but games like Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, most of the stuff that was on a console called the Neo Geo. Um, and it's funny. I used to spend more time, like taking walks and things like that, but I've been lucky that in the past couple of years I got really busy, so I've kind of gone from project to project to project, and a lot of them overlapped, which uh, some of them did recently. um, but I guess I just be a dad.
Yeah, Dad. Yeah, I think this is good. I think that would be your best production yet.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely do. Our friend New York Hart says, "Nice meeting you, Brandon. Retro games are the best." I'm excited for next year. They're releasing college football again, so I'm really excited. I might actually break down and find myself a PS whatever to do that, because I've been missing college football since forever. That's my jam right there. That's the only game I love,
I
and
see
you
like
wouldn't even know who I was. You would, because I mean, sometimes my wife, I'd be playing downstairs, and and I'd be in there, and it's like, the last second, and I make a dumb mistake, and I get scored on, and I'd be like yelling at the screen, and I never yell. I'm not one of those. I don't rage quit or anything else like that. But boy, I get irritated though if I do something bad, and I'll just be barking about it, and all of a sudden my wife will sit there and say, "I'm gonna have to come down and unplug that." So I learned to be nice. Brandon, I want to thank you for coming out and hanging out with me. This has been a very long time coming. This has been so much fun. I'm so glad I was able to talk to you. And I am going to ask for one favor off camera. Let's see if you and I can work on this together. If I can get your help. But I'm looking so much forward to the Battle of Saipan. I really do hope it gets a physical release. Very much so. It deserves to be seen. It deserves to have a chance to breathe and get out there and get the hands of the people who want to see it. And so I'm really good. I'm really hopefully that will happen. Saipan has been really good at that. Like I said, them and Lionsgate have such a good report. They know there's a whole market for physical media. They're really good at fulfilling it. So I think Damon played it right, and taking it to them, because they will get it out there to the people. So I'm looking forward to it. And of course, next year, the Flood. That looks to be super cool. Our good friend and guest of the show, Mike Ferguson, is featured in that movie. Mike is one of the nicest guys on the planet, so we're really excited about that as well.
He played the worst person in the movie too, so he's completely different than his natural personality in it.
Oh, I know. He always gets. It's funny because I remember seeing him when I first met. We met after I watched Silencer, and he went in there and he got killed, and I'm going like, after that I'd be sitting there going like, all right, so like he would tell me about a new project. I'm going like, all right, so tell me you're not Sean Bean in it this time. Are you Sean Beaning it? And he says no, or he'll say yes. But he did this one movie, Brandon. He did a short film called Nowhere to Run. You got to watch that. It's blazing phenomenal. It's a phenomenal movie.
When you see him in The Flood, he plays a white supremacist, which was a hard role to cast, especially shooting in Bangkok. Also, we were shooting while filming kind of opened up to a lot of different productions, and the Meg 2 was shooting. And so we kept losing cast to the Meg because, if you're going to be in this, relatively smaller mid-level, action creature movie versus the Meg, you're probably going to take the Meg. But luckily Mike ended up taking the role. And, I remember telling Damon, I'm like, oh yeah, I know Mike. He's kind of a big teddy bear. But he has this presence about him, and he really has some chops.
He does.
So there's
and talk about casting against type.
Yeah.
He plays a white supremacist. Yeah, I would not put Mike Ferguson in a room with 5 of those fuckers, because he'd kill them all. He's probably the most. That's a perfect casting for him, because he's so opposite of that. But he's a really nice human being, and I'm glad to see him in the movie. I'm looking forward to seeing it. As I'm looking forward to see what you do with it. And hopefully when it comes out, do we have an idea of when it's coming out?
That and Breakout, I believe, both come out sometime in the spring. I've heard maybe unofficially April for Breakout, and I've heard March, April for The Flood, which is through Saipan and Paramount. There's also another one called Arena Wars that'll come out sometime next year, and then other stuff that's getting ready to go I can't talk about yet.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. Well, thank you again so much. To the chat, thank you guys so much for coming out and hanging out with us. And we will be back on Thursday night. We'll be talking to our good friend Kristen Welton. She is a fellow YouTuber, and she'll be coming out and talking to us about her channel. She's a real sweet lady, really sweet lady. Not an actor. She's just a really cool lady from Canada, and she does unboxings and gadgets and reviews of gadgets and whatnot, and coffee and tea. She loves coffee, she loves tea, and she loves cats. What more can we say, right? So she'll be here on Thursday at 8 o'clock. And yeah, thank you so much. Next week, don't forget, next week we have Kevin Van Hook coming over to hang out with us. We have Horror Miser Monty G will come hang out with us, and we'll have Griffinstone Cats come out and hang out with us. All right, everybody, thanks for coming out, and we will see you soon. Brandon, stay right where you're at. Everybody else, have a great night.